Good morning. We wanted to welcome you all to the GPAS Conference on Transition this morning. We wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for attending. The topic of transition is very important and relevant for all of those in the area of autism. And typically, focus has been on early detection and intervention and screening. And while that remains to be a very important issue, transition for those older students living with ASD is equally important. Also, at the end of this month, we'll bring GPAS, the Great Plains Autism Spectrum Disorder Treatment Program, to a close. So this is essentially a transition for us as well. Since 2008, the Great Plains Autism Spectrum Disorder Treatment Program has completed over a dozen interdisciplinary diagnostic clinics, resulting in children assessments, diagnosis, and over 150 ASD screenings. Additionally, we have trained new interdisciplinary teams, have held 2 state conferences, conducted trainings to all regions of the state, as well as presenting at national and international conferences on ASD topics. We'd like to thank you all of you for your support of the grant, and we look forward to continuing our efforts on our new grant, which is Support Autism in North Dakota. Just some housekeeping. Water and coffee are in the back of the room for this afternoon. Bathrooms are out the big door and to the right. There's some pop machines downstairs. For lunch, there's a cafeteria that's called Buckshots that's in this building. Or there's going to be maps at break time that has some local restaurants that are within walking distance that you can go to. We do only have an hour, so if we can keep that time in our frame of mind so that we can make sure that all of our speakers have the amount of time that they need. Tuesday, tomorrow, after the conference is done, you can stop by our registration table and pick up your certificates. And if you need one earlier than tomorrow, if you're only here for today, just please let one of us know at the registration table and we'll make sure that you're taken care of. So now I want to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Brian King. Brian King is the founder of SpectrumMentor.com and is an international consultant on the topics of confidence building and win-win relationship strategies. He's also known for his work with developmental disabilities, including the autism spectrum. Brian and his 3 sons are all on the spectrum. Through his books, websites, mentoring programs, and interactive workshops, Brian has become known worldwide for his focus on abilities and his belief in the potential of all people to develop the skills they need to live their dreams. As Brian says, I'm defined by my dreams and my commitment to achieving them, and not by any label that tries to tell me otherwise. Brian's latest book, Strategies for Building Successful Relationship with People on the Autism Spectrum, Let's Relate, contains life-changing strategies and solutions that will enable everyone who knows, lives with, or works with an individual with autism to achieve a positive relationship that fosters cooperation and mutual respect. This book will be essential reading for family, friends, and professionals who wish to communicate more effectively with those on the autism spectrum. From social skills to sensory sensitivities, this seminar provides parents, educators, and professionals with the concrete strategies they need to help people of all ages on the autism spectrum successfully engage the world to create meaningful relationships and a fulfilling life. So we would like to welcome Mr. Brian King.
Welcome. Is that how it typically goes? Someone comes up and introduces themselves and says hi, and you look at them with a blank stare? Okay, good. I want to apologize in advance for the little cough I have. I'm just recovering from 2 months of bronchitis. So this is the best day I've had, so hoorah. Before I can talk to you, like any relationship, I need to know a little about you. I need to know who I'm talking to. So who wants to volunteer their profession and what brings them here today? The brave beginner. Okay, so you're an autism aide in high school and you also have a son on the spectrum. Very good. Any others? Very good. few more. Wow, a brave bunch. Okay, show of hands, teachers. Okay, down, paraprofessionals. Okay. Any mental health professionals? Good, I can just bash them all day long then. OTs, occupational therapists, speech pathologists. Okay, individuals on the spectrum themselves. Cool. Now, before we really get into it, I would like to establish some agreements between us. Is that okay? First and foremost, this is not going to be a monologue, it is going to be a dialogue. Because the only way we can learn from each other is through conversation. Would you agree? How many relationships are effective where one person does all the talking? Okay? That's a dictatorship. It is not a partnership. So for the purposes of today, in order for real learning to take place, I want to hear from you as much as you hear from me, because there is no doubt a collective wisdom in this room that everybody needs to benefit from. I come here today to bring you my experience, my answers, not the answers, my answers. I've lived my life. I've not lived yours. So in order to best benefit you, to provide value, to be an asset to you, I need to know what your lives entail. I need to know what your challenges are. You all have a handout before you. But the important thing to keep in mind about this is this was created without your input. This was not created with your lives in mind because I don't know your life yet. So we could cover all of this or none of it. It's entirely up to you. Because what matters most today is not what we cover. What matters is what you discover. What new strategies, what new insights you learn today to benefit and greatly improve your personal situations for your clients, for your children, and for yourselves. So in order for this to work, you must not be shy. If you have a question, ask it. If you have a comment, make it. And since I am speaking only for myself and my own experience, if you don't agree at any time with anything I say, challenge me. Because there's an opportunity for me to learn from you. Because are we all living a cookie-cutter existence? So no doubt in your lives there are things that I haven't encountered before. I want to learn from you and they want to learn from you. So please speak up. Please share. Because there is not one statement in this room today that's going to be made that is going to be considered stupid. Because it comes from your heart, your life, your experience. Therefore, it is sincere. It is valid. So please share it. Can we agree to this? Okay. First question. Who is the most important and influential person in your life? Feel free to respond, by the way. That is one of our agreements. Yes? My dad. Your dad. Why? He taught you unconditional love. How does somebody teach that? Okay, he modeled it for you. He demonstrated it. He lived it. Anyone else? The most important person in your life. Please tell me you're not surrounded by mediocrity. There has to be somebody in there that's influential. Yes. Your mother, why? Okay. Would you agree that in order for unconditional love, caring, forgiveness to be accepted by you, you have to agree that you're worthy of it? So technically the most important, influential person in your life is you. You have other people around you that are modeling for you, that are showing you how life can be, how you can be treated. But ultimately, you make the decision whether to take it in, whether to live by it, agree with it, and in turn put it out there in the world. And that's whether you're on the spectrum or not. By virtue of being a human being, you are the most influential person in your life. You are the one that is most responsible for the course of your life. In fact, everybody I work with, I tell them you really only need to master 3 areas in your life to be successful. So that nice big thick book you got in front of you, the library you have at home, if you read through any of that, I want you to filter it through these, what I call the 3 core competencies of life. Because if you can master these 3 areas, you're going to do pretty darn well for yourself. You ready for them? The first of the 3 is responsibility. Now, typically when I ask people, what does responsibility mean? They would tell me, remember the interactive part I was talking about? When you think about teaching responsibility, it's important to be responsible. You have to accept responsibility. What does that mean? Accountability. What else? Following through. Keeping your word. If you say you're gonna do it, do it. Typically when I encounter people who espouse the value of teaching responsibility, I ask them, what does that mean? Well, somebody has to be responsible for their mistakes. When they've done something wrong, they have to own it. So the examples that are given to me is people need to own, speak up, and embrace all of their errors, their mistakes, their shortcomings. And in other cases, they need to accept blame. When you mess up, you need to own it. How many of you really want to embrace that? Any of yourselves thinking about it now? Remember a time where you encouraged someone else to take responsibility that way? We're all learning here today. None of us are making mistakes or blowing it or messing up somebody else's lives. We're here to introspect, reflect, and learn from our experiences. So anybody want to own up to that? I had my day as a parent where I was yelling at my kids. Hope you're proud of yourself. We all have those moments, right? We're human beings that have less than perfect moments. All of us. That's one way we're exactly the same. So if you own up to it, you are the brave one. You are the courageous one that says, I'm human. Yeah, I did it, but I can do better. Ultimately, what responsibility is the ability to respond. The ability to take proactive steps in your life, proactive action to create a specific result. That's what responsibility is. It's about creating something. It's not about destruction. So when you want someone to take blame, to admit what they did wrong, you're asking them to look at a situation where some kind of destruction took place. That is not what responsibility is. Responsibility is about what you created. What makes it a mistake is because you didn't like the result. But they created a result nonetheless. Would you agree? You're always creating, whether it's the result you want or not. So what if you looked at it through that lens? Kid spills an entire box of cereal on the floor. That was a predictable cause and effect result. Was it a mistake? Something worthy of shaming and blaming? Or is it something worthy of stepping back and looking at, wow, how'd you do that? You took some proactive action, some steps, and look what you created. Case in point, this actually took place with my now 10-year-old. I think he was 7 at the time. He went to go get cereal for a snack, didn't realize the top was open and it was too high, he couldn't see it. He reached in the cabinet, tipped it back toward himself, and the entire box emptied on the floor. He looked at me like I was about to bite his head off. And I frankly asked him, what happened there? He looked at me with a shaky voice and he says, I spilled the whole thing on the floor. So I asked him, what are you going to do now? Clean it up? How are you going to do that? We'll get the broom and the dustpan? Yeah, where are they? Oh, I'll go find them. Okay, I'll wait here. He went and found him. He's still looking at me like waiting for the attack to come. And he begins sweeping things up. I said, is it working? Yeah. He gets about halfway through and he looks at me and says, can I still eat some of this? I said, no, it's dirty. You can find something else. This one isn't very dirty. No, please, just clean it up and put it in the garbage. So he cleaned it all up very well, found another snack, and sat at the table. And I said, how'd that go? Good. Did it work out? Yeah. It wasn't the way you wanted things to go, was it? No. But isn't it great that you knew what to do about it once it did? Yeah. Got a big grin on his face and started eating a snack. Now, who was proactive in that scene? Anyone else? Was I proactive? You think maybe I was looking to create a specific experience for my son, as opposed to being reactive, having an impulsive emotional response that came solely from my place of inconvenience. Something I spent hard-earned money on was spilled all over the floor. What were you doing? What were you thinking? Use your brain. That would be an impulsive, emotional, reactive response, as opposed to proactive, which means I chose my response. Responsibility, ability to respond however I darn well choose. Because I want my son to have an experience of his own competence, his own ability to solve problems. I don't want to sit there and simply encourage him to feel bad about a problem that exists. That's responsibility from the parental standpoint. Now, for those of you who spoke up initially saying that your parents taught you unconditional love, taught you forgiveness, maybe they taught you how to treat somebody with respect, those are people that parent deliberately, purposefully, responsibly. And that's just the first core competence. And we're going to be using this as a foundation throughout our entire discussion today. Now, it just so happens that the core competencies all begin with R. So we'll be discussing the 3 R's of life today. Now, we're all familiar with the 3 R's academically, yes? What are they? Reading, writing, and arithmetic? Actually, in my experience, they're read, remember, and regurgitate. Because we're living under the era of the All Children Left Behind Act, yes? That's all about standardized testing. That's all about spitting back rote information that really doesn't focus on solving the problems of life. And for kids on the spectrum, this is not foundational for life. Having straight A's, anybody ever sit through an IEP meeting? Your child's grades are so good, what are you complaining about? Because my kid can't talk to the person in front of them. You can't self-advocate. If you can't form relationships, you will not succeed in this life. You cannot have the best grades in the world and think your entire life will be existing in a vacuum. Without social strategies, you will not succeed, period. The second R of the core competencies is resourcefulness. So when I throw that word out there, what does that mean to you? Who said that? Being inventive and getting your needs met. Okay. Any others? Resourcefulness means being able to look at a situation, being able to know what your resources are, what resources you need, and how to go about getting them. In many cases, spectrum or not, somebody has a belief in their mind where they insist they must know everything. They must be the one to solve the problem. If they can't solve the problem, the solution does not exist. Know anyone like that? And don't say every guy I've ever met. Anyone ever met a person like that? Where they deliberately limit the resources they believe are available to themselves. And therefore, they limit their options to solve problems. They limit their options for growth. They've basically chosen to be stuck because they deny themselves resources. One of the best examples of somebody that is resourceful is somebody who embraces their own ignorance and can look at a situation and say, I don't know. This is good. Because if I don't know, chances are somebody else does. Now I have the opportunity to network, to go online, to ask the person next to me, do you have the information I need to solve this problem? Now I know what I didn't know before. I've grown, hurrah. That's resourcefulness. Being able to realize and believe that the resources exist. All you need to do is find them. This kind of frustrates my kids. Because every time they ask me a question, I say, that's a good question. How are you going to get the answer? Never mind. No, that's a good question. What are you going to do? You can read a book. You can go online. You can call somebody you know. But in this day and age, there is no excuse for not knowing. The information's there. But what I need to teach them is that the answers exist somewhere else besides me. Because as a parent, the tendency is to want to be useful, to want to be an asset to your child, to feel good about yourself when your child comes to you. You're able to help them, support them, nurture them, and make them completely dependent on you at the exclusion of others. You ever see that happening? It's human. Parents do this. It's not a fault. It's human. The important thing is to become aware of this tendency. If you find yourself in this pattern, you're creating dependence instead of independence or interdependence. But when you realize the ultimate goal for your child is resourcefulness, teaching them where the resources exist, then your role is to require them to be resourceful. Not tell them they have to be resourceful. Well, you better take responsibility now because someday you're going to have to be responsible. And then you go back to enabling them. The only way to teach these things is to require it. How do you require responsibility? Now, by telling them they need to be responsible, by putting them in situations where they must be responsible. Anybody here not make a choice today? Ever wake up and say, I refuse to make decisions today. I just won't do it. If you are making decisions, you are being responsible. If you are solving problems, you are being resourceful. There's no way to not put your kids in those situations. The important thing is to be conscious of it, deliberate about it, so that every one of those moments is teachable, so they can take something away from it, something they can use, as opposed to doing it all unconsciously and not realizing that they're actually learning and growing. Okay? Third R, resilience. Now, when you hear that word, what does that mean? It's a new word for everyone? What does resilience mean to you? Yes. Bounce back from anything. No matter how many times you get knocked down, get back up. Anybody here not able to do that? Anybody here able to do that? Come on, every hand needs to be up right now. Everybody in this room right now is here today, whatever age you are, because you have survived and overcome everything that's ever happened to you. You are resilient, which means, the old saying goes, fall down 8 times, get up 9. If you look at your entire life, you realize that your entire story is about getting knocked down and getting back up. Having your feelings hurt and healing. Having a failure, a misstep, an unintended outcome, however you want to frame it, and getting past it. Not knowing something and then learning it. Everybody in this room succeeds, gets stronger, gets more intelligent, gets more resourceful, is more resilient. So anybody says, oh, I can't do it. I just don't know how. I'm unable to. Baloney. Your entire life story is evidence to the contrary. Everyone here is resilient. I'm celebrating my 24th year cancer-free. I found out at 35 years of age that I was somewhere on the autism spectrum, and my oldest child was on the spectrum. Now I got 3 on the spectrum. Resourcefulness is not about saying, oh, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. The I don't know what to do is the golden statement. Because the next step is, I need to figure out how. Because am I so special in this world that I'm the only one this has ever happened to? That I must now reinvent the wheel? Or is there a possibility that this is a shared experience with many people and there are resources out there? I simply need to find them. And lo and behold, I was right. There were resources out there. I simply needed to keep asking the question until I got the answers I wanted. Resilience demonstrates that no matter how hard you get hit, no matter how hard you get knocked down, you can get back up. But it's not like, ta-da! It's not like a somersault. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes getting back up is incremental. Sometimes you stumble a little bit, but you still get back up. Trust me, surviving cancer is not about taking a pill and getting up and going on with your life. Anybody else here have the same experience? Know somebody that did? Anybody else have a child on the spectrum that at any given day you say, I don't know if my child's going to grow? And yet when you look back, compare to where your child was versus where they are now, you say, wow, look how far we've come. Even though sometimes it happens in little bits, it's still happening. It's not going to be like the flower in the garden where you plant it the next day, you can see, oh, look at the bud is already there. Not everybody grows that fast, but it does happen. The most important thing to understand about the 3 R's, besides the fact that you already do it, that you're already mastering it to a certain degree, is if you really embrace these, do them deliberately every single day and proactively. You master these 3 R's and nothing in this world can stop you, no matter what label somebody decides to slap on you. Any questions about these 3? Because we're just getting started. Some questions, comments, some full of balonies. Seriously, nothing? You all still awake? If so, take a deep breath. Excellent. The next page you're going to see what I refer to as the total experience cycle. Sounds very sexy, doesn't it? What it refers to the fact is that everything we do in our lives, we do in a pattern. Anybody here ever get happy? How do you do that? What's that? Do something you enjoy. Give me an example. Go shopping. Okay. For anything in particular? Just shopping, period. You are a true gatherer. So how does that whole process begin? Do you find yourself aimlessly wandering around the neighborhood? All of a sudden you pass a store and you just unconsciously going to begin shopping. And as you come to and realize that you're putting things in a basket, you're overcome by a sense of happiness. Is that how it occurs? Where does it start?
I think sometimes when you find time to do something you enjoy, it may be a hobby or maybe a pastime that you enjoy, and find time to do it.
You find time to do it? You find time. You make time to do it. And what is required in order to make time to do it? Because we all have the same 24 hours, right? We choose how to prioritize it. I think I heard it over here. Decision. You decide this is an event that is going to occur. I am going to shop. Yes, I know the children are hungry, but they're resilient. They will do just fine while I shop. And I'm resourceful, so I'm going to find the best deals. Because I'm responsible for the bottom line of my family's income. So you make the decision. The first part of the total experience cycle, the very top one, is thought, thinking. That's where your ideas, your beliefs, your values, your decisions reside. So before anything occurs in your life, before you have any emotional response, you have a thought. The next part in the cycle is your feeling, your emotion. So if you know you want happy, you have to make a decision to do the things that bring about happiness in your life. Now we have one very common experience, shopping. Are there any others? I'm a big fan of comedy movies. I want to laugh. I know what movies will do it for me. I must decide to carve out a part of my day to watch the movie that I know will make me laugh. I make the decision. What other emotions do we like to experience? Some people like a surprise. There's a couple people I've met that love horror movies. I'm not one of them. They have an entire catalog of horror movies because they like that element of surprise. That sudden spike in their blood pressure, their pulse rate, that sense of excitement. They like that feeling. And they know exactly how to get themselves in that state. Now, there are also some people who like to feel bad. Anybody know anyone like this? Anybody have an in-law that's like that? Now, why would somebody want to feel bad? Is there any positive outcome, any asset that you can possibly get from feeling bad all the time? Attention, sympathy. Who said that? You get the cookie. Because they have decided that a negative gets them a positive. If I feel bad, I get sympathy. If I feel bad, I get cared for. People will take care of me, but only when I feel bad. And the people who want to help them raise out of that, oh, you just need to think more positive. Keep your chin up. It'll all work out. You need to believe in yourself. What you're basically telling them is, you need to feel happy without me. Do you realize how that kind of goes against the grain of what this person discovered? But I don't want you to go away. I want your attention. I want your sympathy. I will lose my connection with you if I'm more responsible for how I feel. Now, if this were a group therapy session, I could tell you what to do about all that. But just being aware of those patterns. First a thought, then a feeling, and the third part of the experience cycle is your physiology. Refers to what you do with your body as part of that experience. I want you to try something. Put a big smile on your face. Now feel bad. Anyone successful? Can you do it? Well, I saw a big yawn. That's a different experience. Anybody able to do that? Put a big smile on your face and feel bad. Does that work? Why not? So your body is part of your emotional experience. You know what emotion means? Energy in motion. When you feel, you use your body. I don't know too many people that are terrified sitting still. I'm just totally afraid right now. I'm absolutely terrified. Would you buy it if I explained it that way? If I was terrified, would I even need to say anything, or could you just see it on me? If I was happy, would you have to guess? If I was sad, would you know it? Because your body changes. If I just said, I'm so happy. I've never been more ecstatic my whole life. What does my physiology, what does my body tell you is the reality of my experience? I'm sad. So if someone says, you just need to think positive. Okay. All right, I'm thinking more positive. Do I need to change anything else, folks? put a smile on my face. Yeah, I can do that. Because if you don't embody it, if you don't do it while you feel it and think it, your emotions won't change. And there's the fourth part of the cycle, action. You can think about the importance of unconditional love. You can feel it. You can kind of feel it throughout your body. But if you don't do it, it will not come into reality. You can know it's important to be patient. You can feel a state of zen, just waiting. Your breathing is a little slower. You're not impatient. You're not anxious. But if at some point you lose that and say, darn it, I've waited long enough. Oh my goodness, my physiology just changed too. Because maybe my thoughts changed. I've waited long enough. Now I begin to feel impatient. My body begins to embody impatience. And I begin to act impatient. You see how that goes? Because far too often when it comes to wanting to change someone else, wanting to influence someone else, spectrum or not, whether they're adults or whether they're in school, where does the focus tend to be? When you look at these 4 stages of someone's entire experience, thoughts, emotions, physiology, and their actions. Thoughts? In school, what's the name of the plan that you use to change how someone else does things? It's a behavior plan. Focusing on the actions. Now, is behavior the end of the cycle or the beginning of the cycle? Could be both. Can you have a feeling without a thought? The thought needs to come first. The behavior is the last thing you see. And yet that's the tendency for everybody to want to modify that. That's like pouring water on the smoke and not the fire and wondering why things aren't changing. The closer you get to the beginning of the cycle, someone else's experience, the faster you can change it. But you need to know the cycle exists. Is it possible to change your behavior without changing your thinking? It's called acting. You can do what you need to do to make someone else happy even though you don't agree with them. You ever been outwardly nice to someone you can't stand? So you can put on an act without changing your inner life. So a lot of these behavior plans are in essence teaching kids how to act. They don't internalize anything. Do what I say, do what you're told, do what you're supposed to, whether you agree with it or not. You cannot teach responsibility, resourcefulness, and resilience this way. Because responsibility, resourcefulness, and resilience are internal states. It's how a person feels about themselves, feels about life. It's not just training them to be good little boys and girls. Now again, we're going to be talking about this throughout the entire day. So anytime you have a yes, but, or how would you use that in this situation, please throw your hand up. Because I want to talk about your lives. I want this to be able to apply to your daily experiences. Otherwise, it is no good to you. So is all this making sense so far? Any, you're full of balonies, this doesn't make sense. Please say it in English. Anything like that? Okay. Is it a little hot in here? Okay. Is there anything that we can do to adjust the temperature? Smash out a window, turn out a ceiling fan? Now we're going to get into some really fun stuff. Are you having fun, by the way? Okay. I don't always read nonverbal cues really well, so I'm going to need some concrete verbal feedback. Are you enjoying yourself so far? Yes. Okay. Is this useful for you? Yes. Okay. By all means, ask questions too. Or just say, that was really neat. Thank you. That's helpful too. So I imagine all of you that work with kids do so. Why? You enjoy it. And what are the most important things that you want to meet for children? Their needs. What are their needs, by the way? Each of them is different. But what are their needs? They need to feel loved. Anything else? Acceptance, happy. That they want to succeed. What else? Safe. Any others? Independent. How do you know this? You just read the tag on the back of the kid's head. Wash gently, dry clean only. That's how you take care of this kid. How do you know? They're no different than we are. But are they different in some respects? Okay. We're very much alike, but we also have individual differences. Are there any constants amongst all of our experiences? Because we're all human beings, yes? We all have shared experience that we call our humanity, the human experience. So within that experience, are there any foundational needs that you know we all have? What do you thought? Imagine what would happen if your behavior plans, your parenting, any work you did, used those foundational pieces with everybody. Because if you hit them at the core of their humanity, you won't just focus on changing behavior, teaching a social skill, something superficial, but you hit them where they live. You hit them in their heart and their experience. How much of a difference would it make for their lives? A little bit of a difference? A significant difference? Now, if I happen to know what those needs are, would you like me to share them with you? Okay, let's do that then. The first need is the need of certainty. So what does certainty mean? It means you want some things you can count on. About a year ago in this wonderful town, you experienced a significant amount of uncertainty in the form of a flood. Who here lived through that? A lot of you. So you demonstrated some significant resourcefulness and resilience, did you not? When I flew in yesterday, I had the privilege of riding a cab to the hotel. The gentleman driving the cab, we had a little bit of an exchange about the flood. I said, how did you deal with that? He says, well, what are you going to do? You can't send it back. He's absolutely right. It stunk. It was terrifying. It was destructive, but it was the reality. So in terms of certainty, some of the important things about your own personal story is you know you are resourceful. You know you are resilient. Your entire story tells you that. You are certain of it. So you simply need to apply it. So you can be certain about those things of yourself. In uncertain circumstances, you can be certain about your own capabilities. Or if you don't feel particularly resourceful in that situation, find someone who is. The gentleman who was working the technology this morning. I was uncertain about certain difficulties we were having. I didn't know how to solve the problem. I didn't have the resources in my mind to take care of it. Guess who did? So his resources were far more vast in that area than mine. So I was able to utilize his genius to help solve a problem I was having. That's why we need each other. So in terms of certainty, what areas of your life do you want certainty in? You have a place to go at the end of the day? Can you be more specific? Home. Okay. There's a place called home that you are cared for there. You are safe there. So you not only want certainty of that structure, you want certainty of those experiences. That when I go there, I will feel cared for. I will feel safe there. I will be accepted there. Anybody here have employment at the time? Or you all just kind of wandered in off the street? You have a job, right? You'd like to have a certain degree of certainty that will not change. That when you go there, it's waiting for you. It's going to pay you the same and hopefully more at some point. That when you start your car up in the morning, it's going to do what? Start. That when you go shopping, that you can afford it, that the people will be nice, they'll be helpful, the things you were looking for will be there. If they said it's on sale, it better darn well be in stock. You want certainty, things you can count on, predictability. That's the first need we all have. There are some people that say, oh, I like living spontaneous. I just like to go with the flow. Baloney. Maybe in certain circumstances you do, but not all the time. We all require a certain degree of certainty. Because if you say, oh, I just like the thrill, the unpredictability, whatever. So I go skydiving. Okay. Would you like some certainty that your chute's going to open? Something tells me yes. The second need is variety. So as much as we like things that are predictable, things we can count on, if we have nothing but certainty, then you experience boredom. There's nothing new. Hey, how's it going? Same stuff, different day. Same old, same old. Nothing's new. Boring. Too much certainty. So you need some variety, something new, something fresh, something to mix it up. How do you get that? What's that? Go out and look for it. How does that work exactly? There's one way you can get some variety. And the stuff in my house, I've had the same stuff for a long time. I haven't got anything new in a while. How do I change this? There you go. I'm having fun with this because I do it sometimes too. My wife likes to buy shoes. My older boy wants to buy video games. For me, I'll go download a new app. Add some variety, some newness, some sense of discovery. Now, it doesn't always have to bring something into your life that isn't already there. Sometimes it's just a matter of changing your emotional state. You're feeling kind of bummed, you're feeling kind of tired, you want your energy brought back up. So you go and find something that does that for you. Anybody listen to music to elevate your mood? Yeah. I use music a lot. That's variety. I'm bored with feeling tired. A little bit more bounce in my step. I'll listen to rock music, or if I'm anxious, I need something to calm me down. And there's one song that always does that for me. I listen to it, all of a sudden the anxiety goes away, and I'm feeling much more centered, much more relaxed, because I brought a little variety into my experience. Do you all eat the same food every single day? See, my son, my older boy, only has 4 things he likes to eat. One of them pizza. But he considers it variety if he buys a different brand of pizza this week. Mix it up a little bit. The third need is significance. Significance, in my opinion, is the experience of knowing that you matter. That simply by you being here, you have value. So it doesn't matter if you have certainty, if you have variety, if you feel like you don't matter, there's something seriously lacking in your life. There's a group of people that has certainty and variety that a lot of them don't feel significant. Those are folks that are homeless. They're certain yesterday they didn't have a house. Today they're certain that they're not going to have a house. They have some variety that they're not sure whether they're going to have something to eat or not. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. They don't know what the weather is going to have. And a lot of them feel very insignificant. So you can have one essential need go unmet. Doesn't matter if the rest of them are, especially one that's that core. Let's say you have somebody on the autism spectrum. They have their predictability. They have everything just the way they want it. Enough variety to keep things interesting, but not enough to cause a panic attack. But all they get all day long is criticism. You messed up again. You're not doing this good enough. You need to correct that. How significant does this person feel? What if this person's primary experience socially is being bullied? Where's the significance? They can have wonderful grades because they immerse themselves in the certainty of their academic prowess. Straight A's, clinically depressed. So anybody in a school setting that says, oh, but the grades are so good, what's the problem? My child doesn't feel like he or she matters. That's a big problem. So again, having one or two needs met doesn't matter. You need them all met. The fourth need is love and connection. Now, they're very similar, but they're also very different. In order to connect with someone else, how do you do that? Because we know one of the hallmarks of the spectrum is that you have difficulty connecting with another person. See, when I learned I was on the spectrum, it explained a lot about my life, as it does for a lot of adults. But when I found out that my older boy was on the spectrum, and the school thought the solution was to medicate him and tell him to do what he's told, I knew I had to figure out how to help him do the very things he would need to be effective in this world with other people. But I first needed to learn how to do it. So I absolutely immersed myself in doing anything and everything I needed to master the art of connecting with other people. And I've gotten pretty darn good at it. But first you need to know, what is that? Is connection simply looking someone in the eye when they're talking to you? Is that connection? Because can you be completely tuned out while looking someone in the eye? Then you're not connected. So how do you know when you are? Because if you don't know what it is, you can't teach it. Relating and responding. Relating with what? Okay, likes and dislikes. You have some common interests. So tell me a like that you might share with someone else. Shopping. Any others? Let's look at the total experience cycle. Thoughts, feelings, physiology, action. You are connected with a person when you are in similar places in all four of those things at the same time. You're thinking, feeling, doing simultaneously. And you're looking to each other, you're checking in. Man, wasn't that funny? Yeah, that was hilarious. You have similar body gestures, similar emotional states, similar thoughts about it. The more similar experiences you're having at the same time and wanting to share those with each other, the sharing of those moments right here, right now is connection. Does that make sense? That's how you do connection. So you want to connect with another person, you need to know what their thoughts are. You need to know what their feelings are. Because simply making eye contact is one part of the experience cycle. It's just physiology. It's just how you're using your body. If you're thinking different thoughts, if you're having different feelings, you will not be connected. You're just practicing mechanics. That's one of my biggest concerns about social skills teachings. They teach you superficial mechanics. When this person says this, you say that. Okay, are your thoughts aligned? Are your feelings aligned? Are you looking to have a same visceral experience? Are you simply playing verbal tennis? That is not connection. Again, it's acting. Well, I said the right things. Why don't they like me? Because you didn't connect with each other. You did not share an experience. And again, this is just not about the spectrum. This is relationships. Human relationships, regardless of who they are. Now, that's just connection. What is this love thing? We all talk about it. We buy Hallmark cards to extend our love to other people. We write about it. I love this. I love that. We put on our license plates. I heart my chihuahua. We talk about love all the time. What is it? What's love? And don't give me the, well, you just know. Being connected, part of it is connected, but connected how? Emotionally connected? Trust? Now, again, I'm giving you my experience. Love is when you feel connected to somebody else at your deepest level of vulnerability, and you trust that the person that you're being that vulnerable with will honor that. They will not exploit it. They will be there with you in that place. And when you can be happy being vulnerable with someone else, that's love. Now, I'm not talking romantic love here. I'm talking like a child to parent. Could be best friend to best friend, could be one spouse to another. There's a book written probably 20 years ago called The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. I'll paraphrase this. He explained love as the complete commitment to another person's growth. Because sometimes love can be a little selfish. What's in it for me? But that unconditional love is when you look to somebody else and you're thinking primarily, not only, because if you're only thinking of somebody else, that's a martyr and your needs go unmet. But if you're thinking primarily of what value can I bring to this person's life? What is it about me, my unique talents, that if I contribute to this person's life, their life will improve, they will grow? That's love. Does that make sense? Well, I kind of paraphrase, I don't remember it. But it's the complete commitment to someone else's growth. And ironically, the fifth need that we all have is growth. Anybody here like the feeling that they've gotten absolutely nowhere? So what's going on? Same place I was yesterday. Haven't moved an inch. Everything is hunky-dory. You learn anything new today? Not a darn thing. Some people that can be so immersed in their certainty that they won't budge. They don't want any variety. They don't take any opportunity of anything new to come in. And yet they'll come to you and say, I'm bored. I'm so bored. Oh, you want to do this? No. How about this? No. I want to change my emotional state, but I don't want to take any chances, any risks. I don't do anything whatsoever. I simply want it to happen all by itself in a completely safe way. It doesn't require me to stretch or move in any way. Who knows people like this? And yet, you look at all of those people who claim to not like unpredictability, they don't like new things, and yet they're not in the same spot they were however many years ago. They have grown in spite of themselves. But they need to realize that. One thing that, again, my sons are very frustrated when I give them this. My 14-year-old, I can't remember what the gift was, but he wanted it so badly. He was trying to sell me on the fact that he was physically incapable of waiting for it any longer. He had to have it. I said, how old are you? 14. So you've waited 14 years to get to this point. Would you agree? Yeah. So you're telling me you can do that, but you can't wait for this game? Well, it's not the same. Well, what's not the same? Is it because you don't want to wait? Well, yeah, I don't want to. Okay, but before you told me that you couldn't wait. So is it that you can't wait or you don't want to wait? Well, I don't want to. How would you like to prove to yourself that you can? Well, I already know that I can. I just don't want to. Well, if you know that you can, why don't you prove it? Needless to say, my experiment's the one that won over because I had the cash, I had the vehicle, I did not have to go and get it for him. So he knows impatience is not leverage in my house. You cannot come up to me and be impatient and expect me to move. So whenever he has that experience, he has grown. Look what you've just learned about yourself. You have now reinforced and become more patient than you were previously because you took the time to hone that skill. And feel free to use that one in your own house. Are there any couples in this room? Husbands and wives? Okay. Which one of you just saying, oh yeah, I needed this one? Okay. The sixth need is contribution. What is contribution? Is it dropping a coin in the Salvation Army tin every year? What do you think the kind of contribution that really just lights you up, energizes you, helps you feel significant, helps you feel connected? You think maybe I find value in this contribution that I'm making right now? Unless y'all lied to me earlier about it being useful to you. Well, it's because I wanted you to feel good. So I told you what you wanted to hear. Can we move on now? What kind of contribution do you think I'm talking about here? Giving of yourself. Because is there anybody else that can do that? Is there anybody else that can give of yourself? Anybody can drop money in a tin. Anybody can write a check, send it off. Only you, this is very critical, please note this. Only you can give your time and your attention. And that is priceless. Because when you give your time, we all have the same 24 hours in the day. Time is something you will never, ever, ever get more of. You can always make more money. You can always go buy more shoes. You cannot get your time back. When someone gives you their time and their attention, they're giving you the greatest gift anybody can ever give anyone. Because you can't get it back. Of all the things any one of you could have been doing today, you came here. You're giving your time today. You're giving your attention to me. And I want to make sure I honor that by giving you more value than you expected when you walked in here. Because I realize you could be doing anything else, but you're here. And I hold that very sacred. So I want to contribute absolutely everything I can. Say when you're working with a child, When you're working with your child or someone else's. When you're talking to your spouse. Your child runs up to you and says, oh, I got to tell you something. Wait for the commercial. Don't interrupt, you're being rude. That moment is now lost. Because your child said, I want your time. I want your attention. I want the two most sacred things that you've got. I want you to contribute them to me. Now, I'm sure they don't realize that. They don't see it that way, but that's essentially what they're asking for. The way you can always contribute to someone else's life, it's not because you have the fastest car, you have the nicest clothes, you have the most money. It's simply because in that moment you are there and nowhere else. You're not compiling your grocery list while someone's telling you about their day. You are present. You're giving them your time and your attention. You're giving of your unique gifts. That is contribution. And every single one of you can do that. Don't learn anything new. You have to go and get some special skills. You just have to be there. And when you are in the moment, attending, and you are present, you think maybe you're a little bit more connected than most folks? You think you're helping the person in front of you feeling significant. It's amazing how many of those needs can get met simply by being there, by being present, by giving of your undivided attention. Does this make sense? Any questions on that? Is it still a little hot in here? This doesn't mean this means turn the temperature down, by the way. I'm not criticizing anyone. We'll take a break in about 10 minutes, okay? The next section is all about sensory issues. Anybody else familiar with these sensory issues? Anybody here have no senses whatsoever? Anybody's senses getting affected by the air quality of the room? Anybody's physiology going down because of the heat? Anybody's thoughts being affected by it? Anyone? You guys are so quiet. I thought we had an agreement. You're comfortable? It's like my wife. She's always hot. So she'll turn the AC on. I'm wrapped up in a blanket. I say, it's freezing in here. I feel perfect. Or I feel absolutely fine. Have the fans on. She says, I don't know what's wrong with you guys. I am just dripping with sweat over here. So anybody here have something referred to as sensory dysregulation? Anybody know what that means? OTs? Any OTs here? Fine. Yes. Are you going to brave it?
Basically, just that you're unable to correctly interpret your surroundings.
Unable to correctly interpret your surroundings. So if we had a Republican on this aisle and a Democrat over here, and you ask them to interpret the same environment, they'd read it very differently.
Basically, you're either very or under responsive to.
Okay. Over or under responsive. So those are the two ends of a continuum. You're either hypersensitive, which means somebody else feels fine in the current temperature. Well, for you, it's excruciating, it's unbearable because you're hypersensitive. The other end of the continuum is hyposensitive, where it can be sweltering heat. Doesn't even faze you. You barely feel it. And that can mean any of your senses. And how many are there, by the way? How many senses are there? 7? You sure about that? 8? Are you just guessing or do you know? Well, tell me the ones you know. Okay, we can't all talk at once. Taste, sight, smell, touch, hearing. Yeah, taste, 6. Okay, those are the main ones. Are there any more? Oh, who was that? And who are you? You're an OT? Why didn't you raise your hand before when I asked for OTs? Oh, so that you would feel not so guilty because you didn't raise your hand, but you didn't have to raise it so high as to commit to possibly being called upon. Well, thank you for getting past that and stepping up now, because we really needed you and you were there for us. Thank you. So tell us what the vestibular is. Where in your body is it located? Your inner ear. And what about your inner ear allows your brain to sense movement? Including the semicircular canals. Everybody knows what those are? I've seen a lot of head nods. Do you not know what that is? Does someone not? This is your opportunity to learn and grow. Does somebody not know what the semicircular canals are? You don't? Okay. Would you like to know? Thank you for asking. Because now, Kayla can contribute to your growth. So you're going to tell her what the semicircular canals are? How many are there? Okay. How are they kind of shaped? Yeah. They're like little loops. And what's inside them? What else? Fluid. So when the fluid moves, it sends a signal to your brain about what's moving in what direction. It'll tell you whether you're moving front to back or whether you're on your head or whether you're spinning around. The dysregulation comes in when your brain doesn't interpret in real time how things are moving. Would that be accurate? Now, for someone that's hypersensitive in their vestibular system, which I am, the plane ride in through heavy turbulence is a nightmare. I came in yesterday early, got to my hotel around 1, and at 5 o'clock I had to pry myself out of bed to get something to eat because I was so shaken. It took so long for my system to settle back down. I also have temperature sensitivity, specifically to heat. So the heat in this room is causing me a tremendous amount of difficulty. So even though that I'm saying, can we turn it down? It's not just for you. It's also for me. Now, I happen to be hypersensitive in every sense that I have. When it comes to the dentist, I have to be knocked out. The last dentist I had put 7 shots of Novocaine in my gums. I still felt everything he did. So that's when we realized I need to be knocked out. But then we did that, and I had an entire conversation with my wife. I didn't remember. Now, we still haven't hit all the senses. That was vestibular. What else is there? Proprioceptive. Now you're all coming out of the woodwork. So what's proprioceptive besides a long word? Okay. What does the proprioceptive senses tell your brain? Where you're at in the world? Okay. Because thanks to my proprioception, I know that I'm in Minot, North Dakota. Man, your proprioception are the nerves in your big muscles and in your joints that tell you where you are in space. Tell you that you're standing up, that you're sitting down, that you're walking. Your proprioceptive nerves work in conjunction with your vestibular. Because the vestibular system tells your brain where your head is in space. Proprioception says where the rest of the body is. Now, if you're dysregulated and these two do not play nice together, what happens when you're moving? Clumsy. What's often referred to as motor planning issues, tripping over your own feet. And for somebody, they say the solution is, just practice. Just practice more and more repetition. and suddenly your central nervous system will get in sync. Does it work like that? But people that don't understand sensory integration, which means getting everything to work together, don't understand what the issue is. So they will continue to criticize, condemn, complain, call someone a klutz, a nerd, whatever it is. Oh, you're just lazy or just not trying hard enough. When you cannot just choose to regulate your nervous system. But is there any profession on this planet with a unique skill set that is uniquely qualified to help you integrate a dysregulated nervous system, Kayla? Yes. Who? OTs. Occupational therapists. I love occupational therapists. They're very creative, very resourceful, and are so uniquely gifted at spotting out the unique dysregulation and what to do about it. Because I have so many challenges. One of them is dysgraphia. You know what dysgraphia is, yes? Dysgraphia. Yes. Yeah, well, I'm a 42-year-old. I've pretty much reduced everything to signing my name, and even that's physically uncomfortable. I need to concentrate to get all the strokes in. And sometimes if I'm really tired, I just say forget it. Because it's too hard to do it. Now, there are so many quirky things about dysgraphia. One of my boys, if he has to print, it looks like hieroglyph. If he has to do cursive, it's like calligraphy. Different muscles coordinate better under certain circumstances than others. Welcome to dysregulation. It's unpredictable. You ever hear the old saying, well, he's really good in this area, how come he can't be good in that area? Ever heard that? Dysregulation. Sometimes you're organized in one area and you are completely disorganized in another. That's the quirky central nervous system that we have. Any questions about sensory stuff so far? So we could talk all day on this alone. I'm going to throw one more thing out there and we'll take a break. There is, how many senses have we hit so far? The main 6, proprioception, vestibular. 7? There's actually 10 senses. There are subsets of the touch sense. Temperature, pressure, and pain. That can all be dysregulated. I already talked about temperature. I met one man. This was years and years before I even had kids. He was very tall, very monotone, very serious, knew anything and everything about sports. In the dead of winter, he only wore shorts. I suspect it was more of a touch sensitivity. He didn't like certain fabrics. I never saw this guy with pants, ever. Some of it might be temperature. He doesn't like the increased heat when he wears too many layers. Pain. Ever met somebody who cuts themselves and say, oh, how about that? My father, king of the Aspies, doesn't feel pain. There was one time when he was hammering something, and he drove a nail right through the muscle between his thumb and his first finger. All the way through. What did he do? He pulled it out, put a piece of duct tape around it so he could keep working. I couldn't do that. I don't want to do that. For me, it would be an airlift to the hospital. Because I'm hypersensitive in the area of pain. Now, pressure, so I'll make this then answer your question. Pressure, I have found, correct me if I'm wrong here, OTs, is the all-purpose solution to dysregulation. Deep pressure. Yes? Because it gives you proprioceptive input. Puts pressure on your joints, pressure on your muscles, and organizes everything like that. It's amazing how many people don't realize this. There are some school OTs that don't know this. And they also don't know how to achieve it in a resourceful way. They just have stereotypical ways. Oh, just put on the weighted vest and you'll be fine. Really? How many people have found success with a weighted vest? Would you agree that the more anxious you are, the more pressure you need? The more dysregulated you are, the more pressure you need. Makes sense, right? A weighted vest only gives one amount of pressure. There are times when you need to have your leg muscles leaned on with an elbow. There are times maybe you need to hang from a bar. That's my favorite. Because it stretches out my torso, it opens up my spine, and it integrates me very quickly. You had a question over here. In my case, he wouldn't even notice it. Paper cut, he wouldn't notice. So if he got a paper cut, he'd carry on, but if he broke his collarbone? So what you're describing is two different things. Like I said, there's the submodalities of touch. So it sounds like he's hypersensitive in the touch senses, but hyposensitive in the pain receptors. So if he breaks something and doesn't feel it, that's because he's hyposensitive pain-wise, but hypersensitive with touch. Make sense? There's a lot more to discuss, but let's take a 10-minute break, shall we? Go out and stretch, get some movement, get some good proprioception, and come right back in. Did any questions come up during the break? You know, like, when's lunch? How soon can we get out of here? Seriously, any questions come up? Wow. Oh, she has one right now.
Okay, when the nervous system is balanced, we know if you're,
I was just going to tell you that.
I thought I missed it.
But thank you for holding me accountable. She asked about one of the questions on the sheet there I'm about to give to you. I want to jump back into it by the exchange that I had right before the break with this young woman over here, who was explaining that her son can get really over the top when he gets something like a paper cut, but if he breaks a bone, nothing. So I explained that what that is dysregulation of the submodalities of touch, that he seems very hypersensitive when it comes to touch. I'm hypersensitive with light touches, because having to ride here from Minneapolis to Minot in the puddle jumper where you're cramped next to somebody who is always brushing next to your arm, and then people are coming down the aisle and brushing up against you, it's like this far from snapping. Brush, 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 it dysregulates you, and you try and regulate yourself only to have that assaulted again. So that's very difficult. But his pain sensitivities were hyposensitive. So it goes to show it's all touch, but there's different pain receptors that can be dysregulated. So in other words, there does not have to be logic in dysregulation. It is what it is. You just need to understand where the dysregulation is so you know how to address it. So she has a delayed reaction to pain. She feels it a while later. That has to do with processing speed. How quickly does your brain register the input? So about how long would it be? Anywhere from a couple seconds to a different couple minutes. So you know, and if you do see it happen, then you know you just kind of wait it out. But if you don't see it happen, then all of a sudden she's in the room and she has a strong reaction. You don't know where the heck it came from. So as she's gotten older and she's learned more strategies for communication, she can now let you in on her experience and tell you what's going on. That's outstanding. So she's able to self-advocate and say, this is what wasn't working for me. Now to answer your question, the top of the page where it says, when your nervous system is balanced, you know it through the experience of, ready for this? Calm and focus. Because when you look at any kid that has ADD, ADHD, you know the kid is dysregulated because they're agitated and they can't pay attention. They're not calm and they're not focused. So sit still is not a solution. Okay? It's not a strategy. It's a command. Proprioception, deep pressure, accomplishes both. Helps you achieve calm and focus. You got a kid that's been sitting on a hard chair for a couple hours and is all fidgety, messing with their neighbor, fiddling with their pencil, turning pages in the book. What does this child need? Proprioception. They need to move. They need to get up out of that chair. Because sitting in that hard chair all day in school, is that conducive to calm and focus? Let me tell you a rule for the classroom that also applies to your ability to stay attentive here. Ready for the rule? Your mind is only as awake as what the butt can take. When your backside is uncomfortable, all of a sudden you start squirming and wiggling around. Where does your attention go? To how uncomfortable your butt feels. And no amount of, pay attention, eyes front, listen to me, pay attention, does not solve that problem. You need to get up, you need to move. You need to use your body. Your body is the best tool you have to organize yourself. More kids on the spectrum, ADD, should learn yoga. You learn to twist and turn your body in very interesting ways to apply proprioception very strategically. Kids shouldn't need wiggle chairs. They shouldn't need to have little accessories to require them to sit still. Sitting still, eyes front, not talking to your neighbor for an extended period of time is not a natural act. So trying to teach anybody to master this is not preparing them for life. Where are they going to use it besides the classroom? I mean, even here, I encourage you to stand up and take stretch breaks. I encourage you to get up and move. I encourage you to do what you need to do to take care of yourself. You won't hurt my feelings. What you're going to be doing is taking care of yourself, meeting your own needs to remain calm and focused. Because if you're sitting here quietly the whole time and you're missing everything I'm saying because you're becoming disorganized, who benefits from that? Nobody. Everybody's time is wasted. So you must be able to use your body in whatever way you need to remain calm and focused. Make sense? So teach these kids how to use their own body. Let them move. Because I've heard this from so many teachers, including the ones that educate my own kids. Well, he's losing valuable instruction time if he leaves the room. He's losing valuable instruction time if he's in the room because he's not paying attention to you. He's spending all his energy to not snap and get an office referral for inappropriate behavior. Question?
When I work with families of children in the school, it seems like in early school years, kindergarten, first grade, third grade, it seems okay that those children can move around, but magically by middle school, you're supposed to be responsible enough to sit in your desk for after school. So I'm just wondering why all of a sudden there's an age that people have to be responsible.
So you're seeing a difference in expectations. When the kids are kindergarten, first, third grade, they're a little bit more lenient. They're expecting them to be wigglers.
Yeah, it's okay to be a wigger then, but all of a sudden it's not okay to be a wigger, but we haven't taught them.
So when you're in middle school, it's no longer forgivable. So the most important thing to look at is throughout that time, have any strategies been introduced to this child? Strategies that the child implements versus the typically IEP-driven reactive strategies where the adults are responsible for knowing when the child needs a break and telling the child. Because if that's the case, there's nothing in there to teach that child responsibility, resourcefulness, resilience. Nothing to teach that child insight into their own experience, to know when they are reaching their threshold, when they are losing their sense of calm and focus. Because those are really the only two benchmarks these kids need to be aware of. All that, tell me how you feel. What light are you on? Is your anger at a yellow or is it a red? The more you give somebody whose nervous system is dysregulated, the more you give them to pay attention to, the more they're going to miss. There's just too much that's being dysregulated in their system. Give them two things to pay attention to. How calm are you? How focused are you? If you begin to lose any of those two, you are becoming dysregulated. What do you need to do to get it back? Simple. But the kids need to know this about themselves, whether they're in first grade or whether they're in middle school or high school. And the kids typically don't learn this stuff. A lot of them, their entire skill set, strategy set, toolbox in school is to do whatever they need to do to avoid criticism. That becomes their primary outcome. Not to learn, not to grow, not to feel significant, not to make contribution, but to avoid criticism. You know how to find out if that is your kid's MO? One question. Did you have a good day? Yeah. How do you know? I didn't get in trouble. Because if a child's measure of a good day is the absence of negativity, there's something seriously messed up about that. He or she did not feel successful, didn't feel accomplished, didn't feel like they were appreciated in any way, but I did not get criticized, I did not get in trouble, therefore I am a success. Far too many kids have that experience. And it's always at their expense because they have to go through the entire day without getting their needs met to do that. How many have had the experience of a child that is an angel at school only to come home and melt down? Okay? Why is that? Because they have to go the entire school day without getting their needs met, and they come home an empty bucket. Suffocating, dehydrated of emotional input, did not get what they needed, so they have to come home and implode. They collapse because they've had so much not done for them. So they come home and you get to see it. Because what have they learned? They've learned that needing to take care of themselves in unconventional ways is wrong. It's inappropriate. It's maladaptive. But we don't want you to have an accommodation. We don't want you to have to do something unique for your unique nervous system. You need to be like everybody else. You need to be, what's the term? Indistinguishable from your peers. Anybody else here want to be insignificant? Indistinguishable? Don't want anything to be special about you whatsoever? I didn't think so. There was a hand over here? Yes. So the school is saying, they're saying this as though it's a positive. So, if I'm hearing you correctly, wouldn't you rather they be good at school and hold it together and come home and fall apart where they feel safe? Yes, I would like my child to see the world as a dangerous place. Because that's what they're asking you. Wouldn't your child be better off not causing anybody else any inconvenience, especially me, the teacher, and then come and make it your problem? Well, my question to the teacher would be, what does my child learn from that approach? And seriously ask the question. Because what the child learns from that is that everybody else's needs matter more. That you should not expect or require your needs to matter to other people. You should not expect or require people to be respectful of your unique differences, your unique needs. That's what that teaches. Because those are the kids that end up being extreme homebodies. Because they learn that leaving their house is going on safari. Or you don't know what number of animals or unpredictable experiences are going to come at you, make you vulnerable, exploit you, put you in a meltdown, and not be there for you when it happens. Yes? Okay? So when they say they don't want them acting out, behaving at school because you don't want them to be made fun of. Kids are only going to be made fun of in an environment where disrespect for diversity is tolerated. Period. If part of that classroom setting, it is not a requirement that we all have unique gifts in this room. Our unique differences bring value here. We are here to learn and grow together. If that's what's modeled, bullying, ostracization does not happen. I've been in school districts before where they actively model having each other's back. We are not in this classroom to compete with each other. It's not about who has the highest grade. It's not about who turns in the test the fastest. We only succeed in reference to how good we are to each other, where character is emphasized in the classroom. But if there is some belief from the teacher, from the administration, that academics is the focus, not character, that's where stuff like you just explained happens. Where people are not required to be decent human beings. Does that make sense? So, we can't talk about the kids' differences because of privacy. We can't talk about the Asperger's. We can't talk about the Down syndrome. Okay. Is difference not universal in the human experience? You don't need to talk about human difference in terms of a disability. You talk about it as an essential aspect of our humanity. We all have strengths, we all have challenges, right? What makes it a disability is that you pathologize the difference. You pathologize the weakness. It's a disorder, it's a syndrome. Can't talk about that because of the label you put on it, but you can talk about diversity. Anybody here sports fans? What if on a football team everybody was quarterback? You have to be the same. No one can stand out. How effective would that team be? Any thoughts? The team that's working with your kid, is everybody in OT? Everybody the school psychologist? Nobody can stand out. Don't want anybody to be different. You must be indistinguishable from your peers. Everybody must be a carbon copy of the other. You need diversity. You need diverse skill sets. If everybody is the same, not one of them will grow, not 1 inch. Because only in the presence of diversity do you require more of each other. I have what I call the law of contribution. And if you teach this to kids in the classroom, that criticism, that bullying won't take place. This is the law of contribution. My strengths are the reasons you need me, and my challenges are the reasons I need you. We are put on this planet to complement each other, not to all be good at the same stuff. If somebody is not good at something, if somebody's struggling, you were put on this planet to help that person, not to victimize them. That's your opportunity to contribute, not to make someone suffer. If you have strengths that can solve that person's problem, that's your job. If there's something that you're not particularly good at, then you need to find somebody else who was put on this earth to bring that gift to the world. My father's gifted with engineering. Can build anything he wants without blueprints. His brain just works that way. You cannot have a conversation with that man to save your life. But guess what? That's not why he's here. His genius is in his hands, not in his lips. Me, on the other hand, I can't fix anything to save my life. So I can try and be just like Dad, learn all the electronic stuff, and there was a time I did, in one ear and out the other, until I realized that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I can verbally articulate my experience better than anyone I've met. So that's what I do. If I need something fixed, I find someone else who that is their genius. And I allow them to live their life's purpose by allowing it to contribute it to my life. Thank you for sharing your genius with me. You are so good at that. You have added value and quality to my life because that's why I need you. Does that make sense? If we taught that value in the classroom, bullying wouldn't happen. You'd see somebody else struggling and say, this is an opportunity for me to contribute, to add value to that person's life and make their life better. You don't need to talk about disabilities to do that. You talk about human variation, human variety, human difference, and that law of contribution. My strengths are the reasons you need me. My challenges are the reasons I need you. That's the human condition. That's how we take care of each other. Questions, comments? Okay, you guys are making me do all the work. That's not fair. Oh, really? You're going to cut me a check later? She says, that's why I get the big bucks. I get far more value out of doing this than anybody could ever pay me. And it's all your fault. Now, we've talked about 10 senses. There's actually an 11th. Anybody have any idea what that is? Not emotions. It's called synesthesia. And yes, I will spell it for you. It's SYNESTHIA. Synesthesia. It means perceived together. It's basically the result of cross-wiring in the senses, where one sense is triggered and then another one fires off simultaneously. For example, my wife was playing piano. She took piano lessons as a kid. She stopped, and I just found this out as an adult. She would start seeing colored rings as she hit the keys. So she had auditory visual synesthesia, which meant when there was auditory output, it triggered a visual sensation. There was a young man named Daniel Temmet. Anybody familiar with him? He recited Pi to like 1 million places a few years ago. And he has varieties of synesthesia. He said that when he sees numbers, each number has a color. So what he actually did was memorize color patterns, not number sequences. I have several varieties of synesthesia. One of the most complicated ones is I have, probably could be best referred to as auditory touch synesthesia. Certain sounds create a physical sensation of pressure. So if I am, more entertaining things, different people in my lives, when I hear their voice, there's a different pattern of pressure on my body. So if one of my sons talks, I hear pressure in both ears and in my sternum. Now, if that child yells, it's hard for me to breathe because there's too much pressure. So it's not just a matter of you're being too loud, it's stop it, it's too much. I can't handle the sensation. If there is a vibration on the floor, the sound of that vibration, I feel like I'm suffocating. If it's a real high pitch sound, I have an experience of pain, like someone had a hot needle driving it into my eardrum. Then, of course, there are other sounds like the sound of certain vacuum cleaners where I will literally start to doze off because it's incredibly calming. And that's synesthesia, that's perceiving together. I met one woman who said that facial hair had smell. That if she saw facial hair on someone, she got a certain smell. And one difficulty she was having is one of her best friends decided to grow a mustache and a beard. And she said, how do I tell him that every time I see him now I smell garbage? How do you explain that to someone? I mean, I don't know what she ever did with that, but I think it's a very reasonable conversation to have with someone. If you explain to that person why that's the case, that it's not personal, it's just a neurological trigger. Anybody have this experience and didn't know it?
After years and years of marriage, my husband bought a harmonica prior to that. And every time he plays a harmonica, it just drove me nuts. And I really didn't know how to explain that to him. So one day I just took the bull by the horn, so to speak, and said, honey, when I'm gone, would you play the harmonica? Because every time he played it, it was like somebody took their fingernails and scratched on the floor.
So your husband playing a harmonica was like nails on a chalkboard to you. What was your specific, was it just that you didn't like the sound, or was there a different sense that was triggered by it?
I just didn't like the sound, and it made me very uncomfortable and like screeching, and I didn't like it at all.
Because that doesn't sound so much like synesthesia. If somebody played the harmonica and you saw color, or you had a certain taste in your mouth where there was a different sensation in your body that made no sense to have at the same time, as opposed to simply not liking the sound. Because there are certain sounds that, people have preferences, certain sounds you do like, certain sounds you don't like. And it sounds more like that's the case for you. You simply don't like it. Anybody else have any kind of synesthesia they weren't aware of? Well, keep this in mind when working with the kids, because oftentimes kids might be having this experience that they can't communicate it to you, and that is the reason why they're having discomfort. Like a certain teacher's voice will be painful to you. I remember one time I took one of my boys for an eye exam, and it was a female optometrist, and every time she talked, he got a big smile on his face. And at some point he said, "She makes my belly tickle." So he felt some kind of visceral sensation because of the tone of her voice. It almost made him giggle just because she talked, because it gave him some kind of a sensation. I saw a hand over here. Yes. Oh. See, that's the thing. It's difficult to measure because people typically don't know they have it. And there's no way to detect it. You can't do an MRI and see synesthesia. It's self-reported. Because I remember I read a story where a girl was learning how to spell. And I can't remember the letter, like if it was a C. The dad was teaching her, how to take a C and just complete it and turn it into an O. She says, "Oh, so you want me to turn it orange?" What are you talking about? Well, when it's a C, it's a green, but when you make it an O, it's an orange. So she remembered what color it needed to be changed to know how to change it. And up until that point, nobody knew this is how she was learning spelling. So she was learning how to spell through color patterns. So it just kind of came up in conversation. She just kind of shared it that way. So your son sees blue and he cries. How old was he when you discovered this?
He was 7, and they started seeing it when he was in early intervention.
And when was that?
When he started when he was very
even at 9 months old?
And I didn't know what it was. In fact, the doctor just told me, well, he's all right. Because he had some stuff going on, they just said he's gifted. You know, there's something going on in his brain that we don't know about.
And that's the explanation?
That's the explanation.
He cries whenever he sees blue. That means he is gifted.
I think they said that because they didn't actually help me explore it of why that was happening, and they didn't want to think about it because they just thought it was weird.
So does he have means of communication now?
Yeah.
How does he communicate to you?
He uses an iPad, he uses gestures, and he's becoming verbal.
Is he able to tell you what blue does?
No.
Has he ever been asked?
Yes. I have. And his ID.
What's the question you're asking him?
They're putting a picture of blue in front of him, and he learned his where, why, and what. And so we're asking him why. All he does is shake his head. No, no. So I don't really know what it is. I'm assuming we took him years to teach him no and yes and what they mean. But since he's mostly nonverbal, I really have no way of telling if he actually knows what that means.
Instead of asking why, the question to ask is what? And go through his senses. When you see blue, what do you smell? What do you hear? What do you see? What do you feel? See if anything sensory comes up, because if there's some kind of a synesthesia happening there, you're more likely to get at with a what question. Why is too big? Because he doesn't know why. It's just his experience. It's just the case. That's like saying, why are you a woman? Why? Tell me. Well, I was just kind of born this way. Really? Is it that simple? You know, why is too big a question for a constant? But what? What is your experience? Because his experience clearly is a strong emotional component to it. But what is it? And see if that doesn't help shed some light to it. So he had colic all the time. Did the blue seem to exacerbate that?
Well, at the time I didn't think about it until we figured out later that it just seems to be blue. At the time I didn't know. I was out of my mind. I had another kid who only cried from 6 to 9. That was supposedly.
It was very considerate. See, the kid who didn't like the blue cried all the time, but other kid just from 6 to 9.
And the days that I would color on would be good, but I didn't associate it with color. I just thought, having a really good day, I'm doing something right. But I kept a journal of everything I did that day, but I didn't reference to color.
Have you stumbled upon any colors that calm?
Yes, yellow.
Okay. Have you ever tried them in combination? To see if you can kind of throw the balance off, where if there's more yellow than blue, if that would help. Because what you want to find is something sensorily that will compensate or offset the stress of another. Last summer, I stumbled upon something that was completely unanticipated. My wife and I decided to go on a hike in one of the state parks near our home. And the day we chose, it was 95 degrees outside. Heat intolerance. But me, I was hyper-focused. I wanted to see a natural waterfall, and come hell or high water, I was going to see a natural waterfall. We knew we were going to be hiking for a couple miles, so we needed to have supplies. So you got a backpack loaded up with water and Gatorade and all that fun stuff, and I wanted to carry it. She kept offering, want me to carry it? It's kind of heavy, it's kind of hot. I said, no, I want to carry it. As long as I had that backpack on, for whatever reason, it didn't feel so hot. I felt that I was more focused, that I could just keep going. Anybody guess what was working? The pressure. The weight on my shoulders was offsetting my heat sensitivity. It was actually helping my nervous system regulate better, because I was carrying a heavy backpack. I was carrying it by necessity. It never occurred to me that would be a sensory benefit. Wait, but you said if he saw the sky, he cried.
He sees the sky, he cries. But like he can sit in class, and a lot of times they let him have his dark glasses, and he'll move them up and down. But he doesn't cry if he's sitting by his friend. But he goes outside. They thought it was the sun for a long time, like he couldn't look at the sun. But if it's cloudy outside, he doesn't cry outside. On great, beautiful, sunny days, he cries. I took him to Arizona. It was sunny every day, and he cried the whole trip.
So there are certain circumstances under which blue does not affect him.
Yeah, I never thought it was actually just seeing. I thought it was feeling. 'Cause,
So what are the circumstances where blue does not affect him?
well, if he's not wearing blue and he's in school, and they have darkened windows and stuff, he can sit in school. Kids are wearing blue jeans.
So if other people are wearing blue,
Right.
he's fine.
He can point to the color blue. He can say blue.
So where does the blue have to be for him to be upset?
On or he's feeling.
So if the blue is on him, or if the blue is in the sky.
He feels the sky. He looks at the sky. I don't know. He's feeling.
But if it's on somebody else, it doesn't bother him.
I can wear blue. He knows.
How many different textures have you experimented with? Like whatever's blue, what is it made of? You've got your polyester, your rayon, your cotton, wool. Because what you've just described, blue is not the problem. Context is an issue as well. It's where the blue is. Because if other people can be wearing blue and it doesn't affect him, then it's not the color itself. So, a couple hands now. You two want to fight it out, or?
That's the thought, but like looking at it, I mean, obviously he sees blue as somewhat threatening because it's really close to him, but visually it might be the amount of blue in his visual field. Like if he's looking up at the blue sky, that's a lot of blue and not much of any other color if it's a sunny, bright, clear day. Whereas if he's in a field of a room and there's a few people wearing a blue shirt, it might be okay. Like if it's not overwhelming compared to all the other colors that he's looking at, that might be part of it.
Okay.
Just a thought.
With our son, things take on a chaotic connotation. It would be chaotic if he can't control it. The sky is all around him, he can't control it. The blue's on him, he can't control it. But the blue right here, he can control because he can move away.
Okay. Are we hearing this?
They control it because of the blue. So he's not in chaos if he can control it.
So the sense that if the amount of blue is overwhelming, it feels chaotic. Now there is some line of thinking out there. There's a colleague of mine on the spectrum who wears special glasses with Erlen lenses. You heard of those? Okay, you can Google it rather. Had a mouthwash moment. IRLEN, right? Now I'm seeing some heads nodded. You want to describe what you know about Erlen lenses?
That the UV where the lights have a different concept of something.
Well, the theory behind that is that different frequencies of color can be regulating or dysregulating. And it's expensive to get the test. Now, one thing that I stumbled upon is with my light sensitivity, white pages of a book give me a headache. It affected my ability to track, to read lines across a page, and to read for long periods of time because the light was dysregulating. However, if you find a colored covering to put over it, something like a lighter blue, some people like pink or a green, all of a sudden, new life comes to that page. I have a much different relationship to it. This colleague of mine who wears the Erlen lenses, if she doesn't wear them, the world looks fuzzy, and it's not a focus issue. It's not that she's got a problem with the lens on her eye. She has difficulty processing that color. So I'm wondering if with your son, this might not be something to look into. Because if it's just blue and it's just him and it's in that huge amount across the sky, too much blue, that specific frequency of light can be extremely dysregulating. So I think your insight of the fact that he can't easily turn away from it is a very interesting one. because that could be a strong possibility. Remember when I said earlier that I needed to hear from you because there was a lot of genius in here that could help each other? Hello? That's why you all need to speak up. Thank you two very much. Right here? Is there anything for sound? Are you talking to reduce sound sensitivity? Any speech and language people here? Anybody familiar with the listening program? Hearing some heads nod. This works better or not?
It's really hard for nobody trained that I know of in this area to do it, sell it, provide it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there are different approaches out there. I've come across a couple where it's basically for a certain length of time, a certain length of time each day, the child listens to recorded music, some of it's classical, some of it's pop, and there are some frequencies kind of hidden in the background that tweaks the ear in just a certain way to try and change the sensitivity in their inner ear, kind of reprogram its sensitivity. And the difficulty with that program is it's like any other. It's really hit or miss. Because when I first began getting some help from my then 7-year-old, my oldest, and I was telling about all my sensory sensitivities to the OT, she wanted to try the listening program on me to see if it worked for adults. What happened was certain sensitivities became more sensitive, so I stopped using it. So there's a variety of repercussions to going that route.
We did that with my son, and it was, we found out for about 3 years we had to do it every 6 months, but we had to go to the children's hospital in Minneapolis to have him checked.
So your son had to do it, what, every 6 months or for 6 months at a time?
Every 6 months, and it was a 10-week period, so he'd do it anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes a day, twice a day.
So anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes a day, twice a day. Was there any benefit to it?
Yeah, he was a lot calmer.
Okay.
Yep, not as agitated. It seemed like he wanted to do more and he controlled himself.
So he was a lot calmer. So whatever was happening auditorily that was dysregulating, that was sensitive, seemed to be reduced. So your son found value. That's wonderful. Okay.
Therapeutic listening is another one.
Mhm.
I live in Florida, but again, they don't have anything like that up there. But I have my little sister, and it's huge sensitivity difference with her.
So your little sister had sound sensitivity?
Yeah, windshield wipers drove her nuts.
Okay. The squeak of the windshield wipers drove her nuts?
And she didn't do it for a week over like camp or something. She would do it, and then she'd get in the car and it would be rainy. She'd
Yeah.
freak out, but all the way there she was fine. I'll say that.
One of my challenges, the turn signal on the car, click, 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 click. It feels like someone's thumping on my throat. So I wait until it's time to turn, then I hit it. So I don't get run into. But yeah, certain sounds like that, they can be so subtle that other people can tune out. For some people, it can be an excruciating experience. So did the program that she used work for her?
It worked great for her, but she's a teenager, she's old enough that it's too much decided. But there's nothing around here. Like for any of my patients, there's nothing that I can really offer them as far as something like that. Because I don't have the one-on-one training that my supervisor did for that.
So if the resources aren't here, one thing you can look into is do some research online. Find who's doing it anywhere and see if it's a tight enough program where you can just have someone consult at a distance. Because these CDs can be mailed to you. It's pretty simple. You know, they're pre-programmed. You stick them in a CD player, put on your headphones, and follow the prescription. So it might be doable that way. You just need to find someone who can do that. Okay? Well, there's the listening program. What's the one you used? Therapeutic listening. Is there another one? What's that? Can you say that louder? Yeah, the Erlen lenses. That's more for visual. Now, here's one thing that's tricky, though, about sound sensitivity, is trying to differentiate between sound sensitivity and auditory processing issues. Who's familiar with auditory processing? Okay? You guys are going to have to just come out in the middle and battle it out, because when your hands go at the same time, What can you explain about auditory processing?
I'm not super familiar with it, but it's just basically non-auditive and grand force with special ed instrument. And basically, the way he describes it is you either hear things incorrectly or you hear them at delayed speed compared to typical. So a lot of times kids that have central auditory processing disorder need a lot longer time to absorb and relay information when they hear it.
So sometimes it's processing speed, where you ask somebody a question and they're not going to answer you right away because their brain needs time to catch up with what was just said to them. So if you are asking somebody and you want to see, do they know the answer because of how fast they can respond? With a kid with auditory processing, that's a lousy criteria. Because being able to respond like that, if your child's brain doesn't do that. I used to work with a young man who literally took no less than 1 minute for him to respond to any question I asked him. It was kind of like a blank stare when I asked him. But once I caught on to the fact that that was the pattern, it was about a minute, that I knew that was an auditory processing issue there. And his mom thought he was being stubborn, he was being willful, being non-communicative. No, he had a slow processing speed. Now, another aspect of auditory processing, which happens to me when I'm tired, is I can be talking to a person, and there will be times if I'm really tired, I know that the words coming out of their mouth are things I'm familiar with, but I don't know what the heck they're talking about. So all of a sudden, they don't make sense. There's other times where it's almost like the radio station fading in and out, where it's almost like their voice is skipping. You hear some of the words, and some of the words you don't. And so when I'm asking a person, I'm really tired, can you just please say that again? I'm really trying to hear you, but just say it again. Because I'm hoping they're going to say the same words so that I can catch the ones that I missed before. Now imagine having auditory processing issues and you really want to have a conversation with someone. How frustrating it is to try and listen to somebody else and really take in what they're trying to say to you when your brain simply doesn't allow you to take in that information in an organized way. And you're asking them to repeat themselves, and they're getting really impatient with you, and they're accusing you of not listening, of not paying attention. Now try having auditory processing in a classroom. Is that going to work? And the solution is they need attention skills. No, they need to rewire their brain. In a classroom where any noise is enough to distract you. Somebody next to you is tapping their foot, tapping their pencil, ruffling some pages in a book. You have hypersensitive hearing. You hear what's happening in the hallway. You hear what's happening in the next classroom. All the while, your teacher wants your undivided attention and accuses you of being inattentive, easily distracted. Duh. You either have focus issues or you have auditory processing issues. And the context sabotages you. That's what I refer to as POTS, problems of the space. Which means there is something about that space that is not conducive to you being effective. Something about that space is sabotaging you. Earlier, when it was hot in here, feels much better now, doesn't it? It does for me. Can't speak for the rest of you. But if there's a problem in that space that sabotages you, there's only so much they can do for you strategically. Somebody who was paralyzed from the waist down isn't suddenly going to develop a strategy to get up and walk upstairs. You need a ramp. Sometimes you need to change the space. There's not always a ready-made strategy so you can do it all by yourself. If it got too hot in here, could I just think, cool. I'll just pretend I'm in Minot, North Dakota. And everything will be fine. Doesn't always work like that. Sometimes you need to physically change the situation you're in. So, questions, thoughts, concerns? Yes? I'm describing your son to a T. I didn't mean to. I apologize. So people whispering sounds like a loudspeaker? Does he also have focus issues? Because one thing that's particularly frustrating in my older boy, and I have this, if you are also very ADD, have executive functioning challenges, everybody familiar with executive functioning? It's everything that allows you to organize your experience. Being able to do things in a sequential manner. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Being able to remember things, being able to order things. Everything that goes into decision making. Anybody have the experience of, okay, I want you to do this, then I want you to do this. No, wait. Tell me the first thing. Let me do the first thing. As soon as it's done, then tell me the second thing. Anybody else have that experience? I've ticked off many a tech support person with that. Wants to tell me 3 things to do, then wants to go off and play Pong on his computer. It's let me know when you're done. No. We're going to do the first thing, then we're going to do the second thing. It's the only way it's going to happen. Because our brains are not organized enough to do things in a very orderly, sequential way. So if you have executive functioning issues, focus issues, that affects your ability to think straight. Do you realize that? And you need to be able to think without distraction, including someone else clearing their throat. I work with families where dinner conversation is a source of frustration because if somebody else is making noise, the person with the organizational issues gets really ticked off. And sometimes it's because that is annoying. Other times it's because, let's say you have fine motor issues. It takes a lot of concentration for you to manipulate a fork to put food in your mouth. And while you're focusing on that, someone's making noise and distracting you and disorganizing you. Make sense? But the kid who's having the organizational issues doesn't know what the problem is. Neither do the parents. They just want a happy family time together. When you have a disorganized nervous system and you have to give your undivided attention to getting anything to work in an organized manner, I need to concentrate on walking across the room and not tripping over my feet. I need to look at the ground when I walk because my vestibular and my proprioception do not play well together. So if I'm looking up and something else is moving, I will start to move too. Grocery shopping makes me sick to my stomach because if I am pushing the cart along and all of a sudden I look up and the cart next to me is passing, I will start moving with the cart next to me. So I need to look down. Driving, they say, look ahead. Forget you. I can't do that. I will get sick to my stomach. I need to look at the car in front of me because that's the only thing I need to make sure I don't hit. So I will look at that bumper. If the lights go on, I slow down. If it's too close, I will back off, but that's where my eyes are. If there's no cars in front of me, I look at the shoulder and I look at the line in the middle and I stay right between them. That's how I drive. Make sense? Somebody said, yikes, does that mean you don't want to be driving at the same time as me? The accidents I've been in, somebody else hit me. And I don't mean I pulled in front of them and they hit me. I mean, they blew red lights. Every time I was in an accident, somebody rear-ended me or they blew a red light and they hit me. I haven't caused an accident because of the way I drive. Something you want to share with the class? I turn my blinkers on when it's absolutely necessary. Because what's the point of sitting in the left-hand turn lane? Click, 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 click. I'm just making the person behind me anxious. When he's going to turn any minute now, I know he's going to do it. He said he's going to do it. I wait till the car's in motion. But usually I have my earbuds in and I'm playing the music really loud so I can't hear it. I also can't hear emergency vehicles or people honking or anything like that, but that's a totally different story. Okay, hand over here.
So when you're driving, then how do you accommodate, like when you're in a big city, you have to read road signs and know which way to go?
So when I'm driving in a city, how do I accommodate reading road signs and where I need to go? 3 letters, GPS. Turn left, right here. Turn, 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 turn. If it wasn't for that, I'm surprised my GPS does not cuss me out. That would be funny. Yeah, without my GPS, I wouldn't go anywhere. Because it's hard for me to have to keep checking road signs and taking my eyes off the road. It's very difficult. So GPS I would not go into the city without it. Changing lanes, there has to be, I make sure that there's a lot of space, because the more cars that are around me, the more things I need to take in and process and account for, the more difficult it is to do. So I'll create a lot of space and make sure there's nobody near me, then I'll move over. Now keep in mind, there are some people, because of their processing issues, they cannot drive and should not drive. Because there are some people that will say, well, it's a rite of passage. You need to be able to drive because it's part of being independent. That is not true. There are people who live in the big cities who do not and have never owned a car. Because part of being an adult means you can get where you need to go. There is nothing that dictates how that's accomplished. It can be public transportation, it can be a taxi cab, it can be your own 2 feet. What matters is you can get from point A to point B. There's a lot of variety for how to do that. There's nothing that says you have to be able to drive. If anything says that, that's because of the beliefs that have been imposed upon that child in terms of what it means to be a successful adult by other people who have decided that a measure of success is being able to drive. Questions, comments?
So what was my son just recently that anytime he gets in a vehicle, he gets car sick?
All of a sudden, when he gets in a vehicle, he gets car sick? How old is he? Now, when you say all of a sudden, when did you notice it?
It's been for a few months now.
So when you say he gets sick to his stomach, what is the experience he's describing?
That he feels like he's gonna throw up.
Does he ever throw up?
Yeah, no, but he lays down, sat down like on the side of the door and puts his head on, and if he looks up, he's like, I'm sick. He said that.
If he looks up, he says he's sick, he puts his head down. Does he ever throw a fit, have a meltdown at the thought of having to drive? How does he manage it?
He just closes his eyes and lays his head down the entire time he's in the vehicle.
So he closes his eyes and puts his head down. Okay, so we know it's not vestibular, because doing that would make it worse.
Sits up and he doesn't lay down, he can get car sick within 5 minutes. But if he lays down with his head down, closes his eyes, has the headphones on, he's good.
Okay, so putting his headphones on helps him.
He goes everywhere.
Okay. So something about auditory input helps him regulate whatever his experience is. It sounds like it might be something that's visual processing related. Because when you look at developmentally, at any point when the nervous system goes through a developmental phase, your nervous system can change. My nervous system did a 180 when I was 17 years old. It went from hyposensitive to hypersensitive. Because when I was younger, I was, banger and crasher, like doing somersaults and doing flips and, doing belly flops in the water, wouldn't feel it. Would cut my finger, wouldn't feel it. Sometime around my 17th birthday, all of a sudden I couldn't handle motion, things hurt, and I didn't know what the heck happened. Of course, now, in retrospect, I do. But just like that, for whatever reason, everything just shifted. So it's quite possible he's at one of those developmental stages where a sensitivity that did not exist before suddenly does. Like kids can have certain food sensitivities, texture sensitivities that after a while, it's fine. Or something they liked for a long time, all of a sudden they can't stand. So it's quite possible that's the case. Anything else? When's a good time for lunch break, Angie?
11:30.
Okay. Kind of like now. Okay. It is 11:30. We've got so much more fun stuff in store for you. But for the time being, let's take about an hour. Let's enjoy some lunch. And I have one favor to ask you. I've been talking all morning, so this is a good time for me to rest my voice too. So any questions that you have, think about your questions, and after lunch, bring them back and we'll get you the information you need. Sound good? Awesome. See you in an hour.